Well, join is an interesting word because it's all about the perspective of what you mean by join. How does someone take a class with us? If it's a front-end class that's open to the public, in other words, you don't require sort of any prerequisite knowledge, it's just a front-end, maybe a foundational subject matter, then what you do is simply look on a calendar, an international calendar, or one of our teachers' calendars, and simply register for a class, which is nothing more than literally making a phone call to register, or maybe sending an email to say you'd like to attend the class. If you wanted to join, that's something that's a little different. That means that you want to go into some higher aspects of the work, you want to go into deeper knowledge, and that would require you to become something we call an adept through the program called Empower Thyself. And Empower Thyself it's a 2-day program. You need someone who's a certified guide with the Mystery School to run that class, and those guides work pretty much all over the world. I think we have guides in, I can't remember, 49 countries, something like this. And then you would become an adept initiate, which would open the door to much further teachings. But you could take several hundred classes, which are day classes, workshops, evening classes, and never do anything else with the Mystery School. If you call that joining, I guess that's where you'd be joined. If you call joining going further, then it would be further down the road. For me personally, why did I come to the Modern Mystery School? It's because I wanted to do more spiritual work. At the time, I ran a martial arts club, and I was doing a lot of personal coaching of martial arts. I then branched off into some mental health support, and I really was finding that the spiritual aspects of life were sort of not being addressed in any useful capacity. So me personally, I came to learn more about the spiritual aspects of life, and I wasn't a big fan of religion. It wasn't going far enough or explaining enough to me to be what I found useful. Others did, that's great. For me, it didn't. I think people come to Mystery School for a lot of different reasons, and each one has their own purpose. I know some people come because they really can't find any sort of healing in traditional methodologies. They're not getting what they want out of traditional modalities, and that's okay. To each their own. I know other people come for the excitement. Some people come purely for the drama of learning about things that don't fit inside of the normal three-dimensional world, and that's just an exciting thing, which is more or less a form of entertainment for them. People come for all different reasons. Each person has their own reason, but each person has to come of their own free will and show up when they want to and how they want to, and our doors are open to everyone. We turn no one away. If you're interested, we're here for you, and when you've had your fill, you move along, do something else. It's your call. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's totally dependent on the person. The thing about the Mystery School is you are getting the opportunity to experience things that don't make a lot of sense to the rest of the world. Things that are weird and wacky and unusual and wonderful and in many cases challenging. Each person will experience that through their own lens of what life is about. If you like being challenged, you might find this is the greatest experience. For some of you, you might say, well, I just sort of want to be told everything's better or everything's okay, and that might be your experience too. It really depends on the person and what their direct individual experience is going to be. My best advice to anyone is try it for yourself. I would start off with some front-end classes, maybe a workshop or an evening. Experiment with it, and each person will go through that process. I want to add something to this. In a lot of New Age teachings, everything is about your shared experience with other people. In other words, what you experienced, and then sharing that experience with other people. And to be quite honest with you, in the Mystery School, we're really not concerned with that. Whatever you experience is your experience. That is yours to have. And it's not that everyone in that room or space will have that exact experience. that's really on you. And although we love to hear about these wonderful, fantastical experiences you may have had, it's really not in reference to anything else for anyone else. So the experience is yours, ultimately, and for what it is. Now, obviously, being a lineage holder and having known that we've had about 50,000 people come through the doors of the Mystery School over all these years, we know that a lot of people have experienced a lot of good things. But I would never try and define someone's experience for them. That's really yours. You're supposed to do that. That's part of what empowerment is you defining that experience and understanding what it means to you and what it does for your life. There are thousands and thousands of people who in their own personal life have experienced tremendous healing and tremendous growth. And so you say, well, how do you validate anything in the Mystery School? It's really simple, guys. You validate it. You, yourself. The results are you. If there's no result, I would have no clue why you would go to any class or why you'd continue on from one class to another. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You would just go live your life and do something else that's not working for me. But for lots of people, thousands of people, it's helping them. It's improving their life. It's bringing them stability, better things, growth, all of that stuff. And sometimes you also have to look and you say, well, a person came to the Mystery School and maybe after they took some classes, they broke up in their relationship. And you sit there and you kind of say, okay, is that because of the Mystery School? Is that because the person wanted to change? Or is that because the person figured out something about themselves that gave them the power to make a change they want in their life? There's many things that happen when one grows. One thing I can tell you for sure is you cannot expect growth in life, whatever it might be, and yet for your entire life to sit in the same size box that you just came out of. So people come to Mystery School and they'll say, well, I came here to grow. I came here to experience or to know more or to potentially know more, whatever it is. And you have to look at it and say, okay, that's great. But if you're going to try and grow and then also make all of that growth, all of that new understanding fit in your current life and just make that life the same size, have the same belief system, live life the same way, then you're asking not to grow. You see, growth infers change. So something has to change. And so often when someone walks the path, relationships change, the relationship to all of life changes in terms of maybe a job, in terms of relationships with other people, their children, their mother, their father, everybody. If that didn't happen, then you haven't grown. Because a direct reflection of growth is change in relationships to everything in life. Not only people, to things. You might look at a table and a chair differently, a flower in a different way, the sky in a different way. And if that different way were not to serve you, then you wouldn't do it. Or, for example, you wouldn't keep eating food at a restaurant for years in a row if you didn't like the food there. That would be kind of foolish and an unintelligent decision. You wouldn't keep doing things that you want to change that doesn't cause change. So the one thing that a person always has to be careful of when you're seeking this kind of change through like the Mystery School, through a spiritual way, is I find that people are always, they come, not people always, forgive me, they come in often seeking the magic wand. So this teaching, this class, this thing, I'll pick it up, and as soon as I use it, my whole life will change. And it's like, it's not really how it works. Everything you learn in the Mystery School is an accumulation of experience and the expression of that energy and knowledge. And it ultimately results in a tool. A something you can use. Here's the tool, a thing you can use, a tool inside your mind, inside your heart, a way of doing something. If you choose not to apply that way, then please do not expect shift. It just doesn't happen. You have to employ the tool. So if we point out to you that doing something this way and approaching it in this way might benefit you, and then you don't do it, then don't expect change. when change comes, we go back to that I'm uncomfortable, because there's that uncomfortableness. So inevitably when someone comes through that process, the first thing that happens is you shed all the stuff that's really easy to get rid of. The stuff you don't like that was really easy, and you go, yeah, boom, and you change and you let go of the things that were really kind of easy to let go of. But when you get further and you're peeling that onion back, going deeper, that's the hard stuff. That's the stuff that wasn't so easy to let go of. And it's the stuff that inevitably you probably can't do on your own, or you would have done it. I mean, that would have been a choice you made, right? You would have chosen to do it on your own. So you didn't. So it's those things, those deeper things that you're trying to look at, to adjust in the aspects of who you are, that you have to really spend some time and figure out a methodology to get to them. And it's almost always going to require a tool and a way of employing that tool. In other words, that system to employ it to be able to get through it. Often people come into the mystery school and they've tried all the regular ways to change, and it hasn't worked for them. And so they come to us and they experience a class or two or three, and then they feel significantly different. And when you feel different, you start acting different. So they begin to shift and things get better for them, and they begin to open up, and power and clarity come through them, and they get more power for themselves to make better decisions. Sometimes, you know, the students of the mystery school, what some of you might just call customers, they love what we do so much, they get a little fanatical. And, you know, when people really love something, they can get a little bit over the top. And we sometimes have to tell them, you know, it's great, just pull it back a little bit. It's okay, you know, rein it in a little. Keep perspective. I know you love what you do and you want to share, but keep it in perspective. But that's actually a good thing. It's a good thing that people feel that way. You know, you see that sometimes with sports teams where people get a little bit fanatical about a sports team, and here in Toronto, people go crazy about the Maple Leafs, and they go into depression when they lose and adulation when they win, and it's like, well, maybe if you put that much energy as a fan into your personal well-being, and you might find that you gain a lot more from life. If there's any drawback to that, it's that enthusiasm sometimes boils over and you have to just sort of turn it down to simmer. But in the end, I think it's all really ultimately leading the right way, that a person loved that much of their life that they're willing to kind of be that involved in it. So progression. The real question is, what are you progressing to? If someone says, I'm progressing, well, what are you progressing to? Progression in terms of the modern mystery school is about growing to know yourself as God. We believe, and we firmly support this in our Hermetic traditions, that each person is God. I'm God, you're God, we're God, we're all God. Together we are a being known as God. As individuals, we are beings known as God. And progression is about you getting in touch and working towards that divine essence of yourself as God. So when one comes into the mystery school, you start off with certain understandings, teachings. Of course, you have to do some foundational stuff so we can all have the same conversation and not be all over the map with different understandings. And that progression is you sort of peeling back the layers of the onion of who you are to begin to move towards understanding yourself as God. And there's a really big, important piece to this, and that is the separation between you as an individual, as your divine spiritual essence, and your personality. Now, personality is something that you've learned primarily from other people. It's also where you filter your feelings. No, sorry, let me correct that. It's also where you filter your emotions through. And so you have a lot of emotions, you have a lot of reaction. You hear today people always reacting to things. I got triggered, he said that, anger, pro, con, all of that. That's personality. And that personality almost always moves you away from inner peace, a divine understanding, a greater perspective. The personality draws you in to the micro of something, which doesn't help you with the macro. So progression is about really, in essence, understanding the macro of who you are, the big picture, the totality, which means the micro you have a much better focus on the micro of all the little things in life, and that bugs me and that doesn't bug me. And if we get affected by all little things, then the big things get dramatically affected. So progression is about moving towards understanding the macro better of yourself than the micro. And we do that in the mystery school through a process of learning different classes, of obtaining certain understandings, and most especially what we call service. And service is the authentic, I'm paraphrasing here, but the authentic promotion of yourself and others as God. So turning to another person and saying, you are God, I am God, we are God. And every decision you make in terms of the mystery school needs to come from the aspect of understanding that you are God, because God wouldn't harm you, yourself, or any other human being. So you need to start every day from an understanding I am God. Progression in our lineage is about you getting closer to that understanding and growing in that understanding. And when you embrace it, even in smaller aspects, not in every aspect of your life, we all struggle with our moments, but as you embrace it more and more, you'll find more inner peace, more enlightenment, that's what we want to call enlightenment, more love, more kindness, less vitriol, less hate. So progression for us is about moving towards understanding yourself as a divine being. And should you come to a higher level class like, say, ritual mastery, part of what we're doing is challenging that progression, challenging your all the things that you resist internally and externally, and even consciously and subconsciously, to accepting that you are your creator God. That it is about you first and foremost. That the whole universe, your whole life is about you. You have all authority. It is your life that matters over anyone else's life. It is your authority. And you need to own all of those decisions. And you need to have clarity in all of those decisions. Why are you making this decision? And I don't mean guessing at why you're making the decision. I mean actually understanding and choosing, thinking and processes and ways of beings that lead you to have a more fulfilled, more joyful life, that lead you to the place which is the ultimate abundance of life, which is personal joy. And, you know, sometimes people say, well, can't you get that without the mystery school? But absolutely. I was not able to obtain it. Other people are not able to obtain it. But my first thought would be, if you can do that, if you have true inner joy, then you really should be sharing that with as many people as possible, because other people out there, this entire world is suffering, people are suffering. You need to share that aspect of that inner joy to other people and help them. And so when we go back to that progression and we talk about service, that service is sharing that. And there is a very, very strong Hermetic tradition that people just seem to ignore all the time, which is you cannot share what you do not have. So in integrity, if I were to give you some advice, I would say, you know, only learn from those who have something that you want too, and be willing to exchange for that. Don't be a person of greed who says, give me, I don't want to exchange, just give me what it is. Always be willing to ask the question, how did you get it? How can I obtain that? What did you do? And of course, the ultimate question would be, how could I do the same thing? And that's everything that this mystery school is about, is sharing that understanding. And for those that don't obtain that, well, then you have nothing to share, and so it is. But as you guys can tell when you check us out, there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world who have found this and love it. And yeah, they get a little wacky. I'm one of the wacky people too. Get a little wacky because we get so impassioned about the fact that this stuff works. It works. It's incredible. You know, it doesn't work for everyone because, you know, so much of it is about the tools that you bring to the table and you using those tools. But it does work for a lot of people. And so I would strongly recommend that people do this work. And if you're going to do service, then you're going to have progression. And that's ultimately what the answer is. Service is progression, and progression is service. The modern mystery school is based on an 8,000-year-old lineage, approximately 8,000 years old. We don't really know if it goes much further. And these are Hermetic and esoteric teachings. Now, some people would say, well, where does that validity come from? Well, we have a list of hundreds, if not thousands, of books that you can look at those teachings and those traditions from. You can go onto our websites, you can go into our manuals and look at those books and see where all of these teachings are coming from, where their direct link to those teachings are. You know, and on that point, there's sometimes even our own students get confused by this. So for example, you'll see us talk about maybe Plato or Aristotle or maybe Leonardo da Vinci, and we can go down a list of different people. And what gets lost in there is that all of these people, and many more that you can find on our websites and manuals and whatnot, are people who use Hermetic and esoteric teachings to benefit society or to elevate the thinking of humans on the planet. These are, and people get confused by that because they don't really understand what we're talking about. Once you begin to understand what Hermetic traditions are, you'll begin to grow from that. So you might ask, what is a Hermetic tradition? Hermetic traditions are this. Hermetic is the understanding of the mind of God without the corruption and pollution of humans in this world. So, in other words, Hermetic understandings lead to wisdom, and that wisdom will always supersede anything else on the planet, regardless of how intelligent someone might be. So, in other words, the authenticity of a Hermetic tradition, Hermetic teaching, is the fact that that understanding will be greater than anything else that someone else could bring to the table. And no matter how hard they try to argue that that understanding is incorrect, the understanding will always be proven to be right. For example, you cannot share what you do not have is just one of many understandings. So before you listen, for example, to a politician or someone else say to you, you know, they're going to tell you how they're going to share something with you. First thing you have to do is say, do you have that thing to share with me? Because if you don't, you're not being authentic. This is just one tiny fraction of what Hermetic understanding is. And there's been many, many great teachers in the Hermetic traditions over thousands of years, which, you know, feel free to look them up, but they're all over the place. Pretty cool. It's pretty simplistic, actually. So, as you guys can tell, we're set up as a school, which means there are prerequisite classes and prerequisite training, because if we're going to go on to further training, we all have to kind of have shared knowledge of what we're doing, which makes sense. If one were to become a Life Activation Practitioner or want to be a teacher or you know, a form of one of our healers, because we have different healing modalities, then what you do is you take the Empower Thyself class. There are some prerequisites, for example, to becoming a Life Activation Practitioner, which would be like things like sacred geometry, and primarily they're 1 or 2 day classes. Sometimes they're even evening workshops. You have to complete those prerequisites because it's the information we're going to share in the bigger program. And then you would come to one of our international programs. They're located all over the world in different locations. They're taught with all different people. All our different master teachers would teach it. And you would take your training there, get your initiation, learn the modalities, practice the modalities, and then off you'd go. And at that point, you would need to be recognized by the Mystery School that you're doing a class or a healing modality or an activation in alignment with the system that we use and what we're doing. You need to say certified. That certification comes once a year, where you need to come in. You will demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of that modality, and you know, you do well, you get certified. You are not required to be certified. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's not like I can suck the knowledge out of your head or something once you've attended a class. You have the knowledge. And you can go off and do your own thing anytime you want on your own, but the one thing you can't do is represent that this modality or teaching or healing is of this lineage, is of this methodology. And out of integrity, one of the things that we hold really clear is that no one is to take what we teach and basically use it and misrepresent it as their own or another group's. We're very strict on that for obvious reasons. I mean, it's pretty clear. You wouldn't come in as an honorable person, come into a class or a program, take the material and then reteach it and say it's your own. That's not how we work. We're about honor and tradition. So it's pretty straightforward. We are called a school, and there is, similarities to traditional education in that you do your prerequisites, you take the class, you graduate that class, and you are therefore this thing, a life activation practitioner, a healer, a teacher. And there are levels of things that you can do in that. So it's pretty direct. Okay, well, why not? It's a pretty simple question and a pretty simple answer. We are many things, and one of those things is we are professionals. And we like to ensure that this lineage, or our methodology of doing things, is protected and being done in the same way that it was handed down to others to do. So for us to recognize that someone is using these modalities correctly, or teaching this class correctly, or whatever they might be doing correctly, they need to remain certified. The certification is super important because it allows us to do an assessment that the person is actually doing the material correctly. And to be quite honest with you folks, you guys know that in the world today, so much of spiritual work in the New Age way of thinking is like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And that is kind of lame, to be honest, that thinking. Often, if it is meant to be, you're meant to work your butt off at doing it and learning it. And there's a concept that's really, really false from our traditions in Hermetic teachings, that you don't have to work at understanding God. You don't have to work at understanding your place in the universe. Yes, you do. You have to work very hard. We nickname that process climbing the mountain. We say it's like you're climbing the mountain, or that's our euphemism. You're going up the mountain of knowledge. And so certification shows us that you are still in alignment with the way we do things. Now, how does one not become certified? It's simple. Just don't show up for certification. You're not certified. And go do whatever you're going to do. Just make sure that you represent what you're doing in honesty and integrity. And we used to operate for many years without certification. But what happened is people were getting completely different kinds of training and teachings. There was highly inconsistent understandings. It was not professional. So we've switched to this methodology a number of years ago. And I think anyone who's in the professional world, if you have a career in something, you understand that certification and licensing just comes with the territory. It's what it is. But nobody's required to stay certified, unless, of course, you desire to do even higher training. So let's say you're a life activation practitioner, or you're a teacher or something, and you want to come in and learn the next level stuff, whatever that stuff might be. Then you would obviously need to be certified, which is an indicator to us that you are respecting and honoring what has already been given to you prior. I would not allow, none of the senior people around the world would allow someone to come in who is uncertified and then give them even higher training, because in that lack of certification, it's an indicator to us that you may or may not actually be in alignment with what's being handed down to you, what's being taught to you, and that you might falsely misrepresent who we are and what's going on. So certification to us is really important. And though I know it's a kind of a pain in the butt for some people, it is the way we've chosen to maintain our lineage, and it's the right choice. So in our mystery school, we have something called a guide, which is kind of a uniquely special position. I mean, there's a few special places, but a guide is kind of special because they are the person given the authority and the training and the knowledge and the power to initiate someone in the Empower Thyself class. So they're kind of like, to make it simple, they're the teachers of the Empower Thyself class. And I think in the Western world, there's about like 150 guides or something, and then worldwide maybe 350, something like that. Anyways, They're the people that teach the Empower Thyself class, and we hold them to a pretty high standard. Sometimes people will turn around and say, oh, this guide did this or this guide did that, and I did or I didn't like it, whatever it might be. You need to understand something about guides. They're human beings. And in terms of the entire mystery school, the biggest drawback of the mystery school is it's full of people, because people have all different kinds of things. And someone, for example, who's a guide, they are trained to do the best possible job, but everyone has that own individual expression of that guidehood. And by asking to become a guide, by accepting that role, what you're asking to do is to take on being one of the highest level representatives of the Hermetic traditions that we share with people. So you are committing to be, in the purest way possible, to maintain what has been taught to you to hand down and teach to other people. And we're pretty strict about that, understanding that people make mistakes and sometimes things aren't perfect and there's different dynamics, but we're pretty strict about that. Now, anyone who asks to be a guide or requests to be a guide would have to apply for that role. And almost always they are told, this is what you really want to do. It's that level of commitment and request and committing back to the work that you want to receive this knowledge. So it doesn't come easily and it's not an easy role, and you're asking for a very specific role to be a representative of the lineage. So you step into that role. Now, some would say, well, I've heard sometimes people are removed from that role, and that's 100% true. Because if you ask to be a guide and then you don't do that, so I want you to look at it like a job. So you request to be a representative of an organization, and then you spend several years, usually it's years, not doing that. At some point in time, we're going to say, well, you're not representing the work, and you're not doing what you said you wanted to do, what you asked to do. And so then we will remove them from that guide level. And that doesn't mean that removed from everything else, they would be removed from being a guide. And we do that because we try to hold the entire guide group, which we call a quorum, at the highest level and integrity possible. Now, a person can be a guide kind of part-time, and then there's others who do it at a much more formal, a high level where that's their entire job and livelihood and life, and everything they live comes through being a guide. And we make room for everyone, from the people who want to do, do the work, but they have, regular full-time careers and whatever, to a person who wants to do it 100% full-time and dedicate themselves to it. And so we have what we call junior guides, which are the people that do it on occasion, and then we have what we call senior guides, which are the people that do it full-time, and that's what they do. If a person, is removed as a guide, for the most part, it's because they're not actually in alignment with what they've requested to do. So they're not performing the duties of what they said they would do. And that has to happen sometimes. It has to happen for our integrity, and it has to happen for all the authenticity of who we are. Of course, as you could imagine, when that happens, some people get really angry, and then they kind of explode. And we're sort of used to that explosion when that occasion comes up. I would prefer it didn't happen, but there's not much I can do about it. If a person isn't doing that role, then they're moved out of that role. But for the most part, most of the guides are highly dedicated and they work really hard at it. And it's through that action and effort that they see direct growth. And on that note, sometimes people ask about how many people, how do people in the mystery school, come in? And they primarily come through guides. And between 80 and 90% of all the people that come in to the mystery school, the higher master teachers will never see them, because they will simply be clients of the guides. The guides will teach, different classes and do different things. And it's only a very small number that might decide, I also want to be a practitioner. So one of the really cool things about the mystery school in terms of that growth is that someone comes in through a guide, becomes an adept, and they can do literally hundreds of classes and go do nothing else. But everything that guide is doing, the very processes, the classes they're teaching, the potential spiritual work they're doing, all of it, that person can learn how to do also. There's no glass ceilings. Everybody can go as far as everyone else. And to me, that's one of the coolest things about the work as a guide, is really the success of a guide comes when someone comes in, takes something with you and says, which is the greatest compliment I can think of, I want to be like you. I want to do what you do because I think it's the cool thing. And so that to me is really super duper awesome when that happens. And that can only happen because this very special role of a guide exists within the lineage. The mystery school has lots of titles, and I know, again, in our modern age of thinking, titles tend to lead to a thinking that it means bad. And yeah, the truth is there's a lot of titles in this world that have led to not good things, but that's not how we operate. Our titles represent the culmination of an understanding of something. And for example, I'm an abscissimist, and people say, what does that mean? And it's like, okay. It means that I've come to understand these teachings at the deepest level and understand, more importantly, myself as an individual in interactions with the rest of these teachings, the universe, and so on and so forth. That's all it means. And what's important to understand is titles exist to indicate there is somewhere for you to go in life. It's very important to have that open. There's not a title in this mystery school that someone can't get to. So, in other words, I am an abscissimist, and what that means is that there is such a thing as an abscissimist that exists, and it also means that the door is always open for others to become abscissimists, because there can be many, many abscissimists. So, much like if you were in a baseball team, you'd look at your coach and you say, coach, and that's a respectful thing because the coach is coaching you. And if a teacher is teaching you, say, teacher. This is what these titles mean. I'll tell you personally, I couldn't stand having a title. I like just being Dave. It's just who I am. And it was only through talking to Founder Goodney, and honestly taking almost about 2 years for him to convince me that I had to really respect the title of abscissimist, and it was for the purposes of something to leave the door open for others to come with you. And so that's why we have these titles. Every title in the mystery school, every single one, is available to everyone. There is an opportunity for anyone to come in and do that thing. And, you know, to be honest, there's an opportunity, and I hope and I pray, for those who come behind us to become greater than we are and keep going and become bigger and greater. Because this world is in seriously desperate need of light. It needs a lot more compassion, a lot more hermetic understanding and wisdom so that we can make some better decisions about where we go in life. And so I hope and I pray, and I hold the title, and others hold their titles in this mystery school, so that we can have others come join us and have that same understanding so that we can all move forward together and ultimately make this world a better place. It's fairly simple because not everyone is ready to do everything. And you have to understand we are a school in the way that we operate. You could look at us outside and say we're a seminar company. We're a seminar company that operates like a school. Whatever way makes you feel better, that's fine. But if you want certain teachings in the school, you've got to show a certain level of dedication. Most of that dedication, honestly, is about being an honorable, respectful person in life, and that you are respecting what has come before you, what you've been given before you. So we don't believe here in the concept of I ask, therefore you must give. We believe in the concept of someone needing to be worthy, in other words, prepared to receive. It won't do me any good if you were to come to a class, or any of the other master teachers, Third Order, Council of 12, you were come to a class and you simply were not ready to receive that information. In other words, you're kind of stuck in your own knowledge, and that's preventing you from actually hearing something that you need to hear, or you are, just not in a place where you're able to kind of anchor or understand what's being taught. We don't want to take your time or your money without knowing that at least there is a step in there where you are requesting the knowledge because you have some concept of what you're asking for. And that gives us, and we reserve the right to say no. And depending on what it is a person's applying for, sometimes the answer is simply no, not right now. I would recommend you go and do this for another year or two or something else. Sometimes the person's ready and you say, yes, that's great. You can take this training or whatnot. But it really is the most respectful way to the teacher and the student to be able to teach a class. Is it perfect? No. But it is a very good way to be able to make sure that people have some pre-understanding of what it is they're asking for in terms of higher knowledge and teachings. That is an interesting question, because prefaced in the question is why do they charge so much? And it kind of makes me think, well, okay, but you don't, how much is too much? What is too much? You see, the question is framed on an understanding that a certain level of a cost of something is too much money. If you bought a Cadillac, is it too much money as a car, period? Or if you bought a Rolls Royce, is that too much money? Or a Bugatti? If you bought a mansion, is it too much money? Or are you getting what you paid for? I don't really accept that question in the phraseology of the way it's being offered. The mystery school charges the value of what we think you get out of it. You, as a free will human being who live their life in any way you want, decide if you find it or think that it's valuable enough. So if I turned around and said that a Rolls Royce was worth this much money, you can decide if you think it's too expensive or not. It all depends on where you sit with things, whether you consider it expensive or very inexpensive. There are some organizations who do a lot of seminars and classes who are way, way more money than we are. Then there's others that are way, way, way less than we are. I will tell you that at the highest end, the School of the Mage program is probably about 4 years long, and it's about $100,000. But I have no idea why anyone would take any class that they don't think is worth the money. I mean, why would you do it? Just don't do it. I don't understand that as being a prerequisite. It's kind of like, if we go back to the car thing, it's kind of like saying to the Rolls-Royce dealership that they shouldn't be in business because they charge so much for their Rolls-Royces. You don't buy a Rolls-Royce if you don't want a Rolls-Royce. Go buy something else. And so we are a very, very high quality, very well run organization. And we have the best teachers in the world at the material that is taught. And we charge for that. And if a person feels that it's too much money, then I just wouldn't come. It's just not something you want to do. Don't do it. But for those who want to do it, obviously, many thousands, they do it. In terms of, sometimes people say, well, you could say, doesn't that prevent someone from having some knowledge that they might need? And, there might be some truth to that. The thing is, when anyone who's ever struggled financially, if we go to that commitment and dedication and discipline thing, then we will always stand behind them to get there. And it's something we do. It's something I do personally. It's something the other teachers do. We will always figure out a way to help that person go to that class, even if they don't have the payment for it. If they're really showing the dedication and that they want it. We have in the past done many scholarships where a person will write in and explain their situation, and we've just granted them classes at no charge because that's their situation. Although we firmly believe in exchange, and that is that you should never take without wanting to give back, because then that creates greed in the world. So don't walk over to someone and say, give me that because I want it. You should always walk over to the person and say, I'd like that. How would I obtain it? So it's not always about money. Sometimes it's simply about the effort and the energy of that person. And we we help people all the time, and it's to be honest, guys, often when I help people financially, I get bitten by it. They take the teachings and they run away and never pay for it. And it's just kind of comes with the territory. But I'd rather be made to look like a sucker helping people out financially when they need the help than to hold back what they need to do if they feel that they can grow through that class. And to add to that, there is something where, for the stone throwers in the world, you know, they try and catch you both ways. If you don't help a person financially, you know, and it can be anything from a $50 evening class to, you know, a $5,000 teaching for 3 or 4 or 5 days. If you don't help them, the accusation always is that you didn't help them, you're withholding knowledge that they might need or help they might need. What a bad, evil organization you are. Okay. And we've been accused of, if you do help them, there must be some nefarious other, you know, thing that you're doing. You're helping them to, what, I don't know, control them or something stupid. And the reality is, I'd much rather be accused of helping someone for a nefarious means than not helping them. So where people are truly dedicated, we're always going to help them. And for those of you that think it's not the right way to go, well, it sort of is from our perspective, and that's how we're going to do it. Here's another misconception in the world of understanding spirituality, and this concept that it is only the impoverished and the poor that understand the spirit. And that's kind of dumb, because what it does is it leaves all the money to the people who don't care or don't feel that way, and it leaves all the people who are trying to potentially improve the situation with nothing, at least through spirituality. They may be trying to improve it in other ways, but in terms of the mystery school, we don't believe that. We believe in royalty. We believe that everyone is God, goddess, each individual, and that everyone deserves to be wealthy. And that wealth is going to probably require a lot of work on your part, but you should not shy away, or it is not an automatic default that wealth immediately infers that you are a person of ill intent or a person who is not godly. Of course you are. All money is, in the perspective of the mystery school, is an amplifier for your internal belief system to be expressed in a physical way. So if I have a lot of money, I can assure you that my feelings about art, the cars I want to drive, the homes I want to live in, the way I want to live, how I want to travel, whatever, the clothes you're going to wear, they're going to be expressed because you have the ability to express it with many more options than a person who doesn't have it. So you're going to see the inner workings of that person quite clearly. If that person is a person of negative intent, you will see that clearly. If the person is of positive intent, you will see that clearly. And the reality is that we want the good people to have as much wealth as possible, because then you won't have starvation and suffrage from impoverished situations, because the money will be there. So we do not believe, and we do not teach, nor do we support the concept of you being an impoverished person makes you a better person. No, money makes the world go round. Mastery of it is a big part of it, and you have to learn how to master that money. It's a big part of life, guys. And you know, if you're getting older in life and you're still not financially stable, then you really need to look in the mirror and make some different decisions. With or without this mystery school, it's not important in that way. What's important is that you make a decision around finance and growth, and take care of yourself. Make sure your foundation, that you can pay for your home and your food and whatever way you want to live to the best of your ability. But the necessity of abundance is very important, and abundance is a great many things. It's an overflow of love, joy, family, friends, all the good things in life. But one thing that is almost always ignored, especially in sort of New Age teachings, is abundance is income. And on that note, related to that, please never, ever, ever, my advice to you is learn how to handle income from someone who has no income, how to handle money from someone who's broke. In other words, we firmly believe that, especially around the teachings of wealth, that you really need to be taught by people who understand what wealth is, because we go back to our Hermetic training, you cannot share what you do not have. And so, you know, money, guys, expressed in a good way is a very good thing and can make the world a better place. So we don't shy away from money, but one should not live for money. One should use money to make your life great, your family and friends' lives great, and as many other people as you can touch. You should make their life great. And it's only through the overflow of abundance. For example, we are able to support women's shelters for battered and abused women and children, because we have an overflow of abundance, and then we take that overflow, a good chunk of it, and we give it to charities to help them. Good charities, ones that really spend the money on the correct thing. You can't do that without money, guys. If you want to stop starvation in the world, you're going to have a much greater influence on doing that if you have money than a person who is broke. If you want to help homeless people, you're going to have a much greater influence if you have money than if you don't. So in our teachings, money in a respectful, exchanged way is a very valuable and very important and honorable thing to have in this world. And it's the mastery of money that we really have to get to. The use of it in the correct way to benefit ourselves and others in the highest level possible. Yes, of course we believe in magic, but the problem is that the layman or a person outside the mystery school or any sort of higher Hermetic understanding of what we mean by magic tries to interpret that to mean something like, poof, here's a fireball, or here's a spell, or you know, you point your magic wand and a lightning bolt shoots out of it, or something like that. They don't really understand what magic is. Magic is turning nothing into something and something into something else. It's primarily the process of transformation, and so much of magic is about the alchemical process, the alchemy of the transformative process. So magic is very real. And there are certain ways we can operate that magic, but the magic is operated in a way that is often very powerful, but yet subtle to the eye and subtle to the ear, but powerful to the essence of the person. In other words, the echo of the magic is often shown in fruits as their life goes on. It's not the poof fireball. And I know that a lot of laymen, they like to run around and say, oh, you guys believe in magic, ho, ho, ho. Yeah, I do. But if you mean like stage magic, sleight of hand, I believe in that too, because people study sleight of hand magic. I believe in film magic. There's all kinds of magics. But we have, in our tradition, we have left and completely become blind to the magics of the world that is within our grasp to wield. And that magic, so much of it is about an understanding of certain understanding of flows and frequencies and how to use them in an appropriate way. And so you would say, well, how do you know magic works? And the answer is simple. If you understand the magic and you have the training and authority and you know how to do it, you will see the fruits of that magic. But if you're talking about throwing fireballs or walking through walls or levitating off the floor, let me know when you see someone do that. I'd be happy because I'd love to see it too. But if you're talking about the magic that transforms, the magic that changes all of life to a better flow that allows you to see the greater whole, 100% that magic exists, without doubt, without fail. You know, that question comes up sometimes, and for some of you it's going to kind of push your buttons, the answer. You're not going to like it. Some of you are going to understand it in a different way. I mean, it is what it is. As a mystery school, we believe that the way to know hidden knowledge, which is within thyself, is that you have to work at it. You have to work at peeling that onion, peeling those layers back and getting to it. That work that you want to try and find what's really going on inside of you, inside your mind, inside your heart, inside your life choices, And in essence, understanding also what is going on around you, the universe, why people are doing what they're doing, those kind of things. That study requires commitment and hard work. And so the mystery school holds people to that commitment. And when someone says, I want to learn a higher teaching, and you know, one of the master teachers might say, okay, but that requires a year-long study or a commitment of meditating 2 hours a day, or whatever the commitment is, we hold you to it. And usually, to be honest, guys, in writing, so that you know full well what comes with that request. Here's the thing. Most spiritual practices in the New Age movement, and I'm not talking about necessarily things that have more grounded, longer history like Buddhism and Shintoism and things like this, but New Age, what is meant to be, and all that kind of stuff. They don't require or demand any sort of commitment and fulfilling of those commitments. And I can tell you that if your path is left to the ego, if your decisions to know thyself is left purely to your ego and what makes you feel better, you will inevitably fail. There's no two ways about it. So I want to share with you guys something that I came up with, and it's called the pancake principle. And it's really important because so many teachings in spirituality, and let's just sort of leave religion out of this for this aspect. So because religion, you have a different context and different sort of dogmatic setup. So let's just talk purely New Age. So much is about making you feel better. And it's the concept of, you know, let's say you love pancakes. So I make you pancakes. I make you peach pancakes. They're the best pancakes in the world. The greatest pancakes you've ever had. And if you don't like peach, I make an awesome blueberry, a chocolate chip. If you just like a buttermilk, I can go with that. Whatever you want. I will make you pancakes with real maple syrup, and I mean the good stuff. And, you know, there'll be a little tear in your eye, and you'll be like, those are the best pancakes I've ever had, which is fantastic. And when you eat those pancakes, you will think that they were the greatest pancakes you've ever had. You'll feel good. You'll be happy. It'll bring a smile to your face. Now, that wonderful pancake breakfast that you have, it's not going to change any aspect of your life. You're not going to suddenly understand that the universe is brighter. You're not suddenly going to go out and understand why the world is working the way it is. You're not going to suddenly understand progression. None of that's going to change that. But for a moment in time, you will feel a sense of comfort. And that sense of comfort is a very dangerous thing. Because in the mystery school traditions, we are directing you and helping you. And you have to walk it yourself, by the way. I mean, I'm not going to carry you, and no one's going to carry you. You have to get there yourself. We are directing you to find true inner joy. And inner joy is a state of being. It's a state of existence to be in joy. It's not something that comes and goes like happiness. And so much of what's happening in New Age is that they're trying to offer you, and I can't say that for all of them because there's so many different organizations, but they're trying to offer you happiness. They're offering you the pancakes. We're not really about the pancakes. We're about the long-term growth. And you need to understand that growth is often highly uncomfortable. You have always grown. I will challenge you to this. And even though I know I'm talking to every single person on this camera, which is pretty much anyone else left in the world, your growth has always come from the greatest challenges that you faced and then overcoming those challenges to then grow. So it is from the greatest struggle that we gain the greatest reward. The mystery school, the beautiful struggle that you experience inside the school is about the struggle of yourself. There's really no external struggle. It's the struggle within yourself. The only way you're going to get past that struggle is through a commitment to get past that struggle. You're going to commit to get to the other side of that struggle. Here's the thing. To do anything that is not natural requires commitment. If it's natural, you don't need to commit to it. You do it naturally. An unnatural state, which is often the only way to transform yourself into a higher sense of self or a higher way of knowledge, is to do something that's unnatural. And in that unnatural thing that you want to do, you have to commit to that thing. So in other words, it's not natural for us to understand physics or quantum physics. We aren't born just sort of understanding it. We have to do an unnatural thing. We go to high-level training, we go to teaching, we go to high-level universities, and we learn that thing and we make that commitment. Now for that tree, if you want to say the tree is the tree of commitment, it's planting to do something. The commitment always has to be something that isn't natural, which means, in essence, it will challenge you. Right from that first understanding, I am now being challenged by something because it's an unnatural state, which means I have to work on it. And to work on it and to actually obtain something valuable, I'm going to have that level of commitment, and that commitment is only going to come through discipline and consistency. So if I say I'm committed, it means that it's something that is unnatural for me. And the only way that tree of commitment will bear fruit is if I tend it with discipline and I stick with it and I'm consistent. If I'm disciplined and consistent, then the commitment will fulfill the fruits. The mystery school holds you to your commitments. If you come to me and say, I want to learn this, and I say the way to learn this, you must do this. You must meditate 2 hours a day. And then you don't meditate 2 hours a day, you have broken your covenant with me as a teacher, with yourself for your own commitment. And really, that's where we make a big difference, because I will hold you at the higher levels. Now, at the beginning, it's not like that, because it's completely up to you what you're going to do. But once you get higher up, and this is where sometimes you hear people are said, well, the mystery school rejected me or whatever. It's because you're generally not holding to your commitment. And that's where the failure comes in. And yeah, that gets stones thrown at us, but I and the rest of the leaders in this mystery school would rather have stones thrown at us for holding people to the commitment, because that's the only way they're going to get there, than to turn around and sort of melt down and just let a person do whatever they want. If you came into this mystery school, into this lineage, and did whatever you want, you would fail. It would be a tragic waste of your time and money, and the teachers, whoever they may be teaching you, time and money. So we hold you to your commitments. We hold you to behaving in a way that is to the best of your ability, in alignment with what you're asking for. And we understand that mistakes are made. We understand that you're not perfect. We understand that sometimes you stumble. But as long as I see that discipline and that consistency, even if it's not perfect, and that tree is there, then you can go as far as you want to go. And that's really the core difference between the mystery school and sort of outside teachings. And, you know, to be honest, for a lot of people coming into the school, it's really hard, especially if they've done other things. And then they come here and we go, yeah, but you committed to do this, so we're not opening the door in this particular teaching. And then they get a little frustrated, and it's like, you have to learn as a human being, if you want to be successful in life, you in every aspect, inside and outside this mystery, you're going to have to learn that when you say something, you have to back it up. You have to, if you say, I'm going to do that, then you really should do that. And in terms of the mystery school, when someone says, I'm going to do that, we take you at your word that that's what you're going to do. And then we remind you of that in some cases, that that is what you've said you're going to do. And so that's really the core difference. Well, I was doing mental health work, and I was also a martial arts coach. I've done a bunch of different martial arts in my life. And I just thought it was an aspect of life, spirituality, that needed to be explored more, because I was crossing it in many different avenues in my life. And I kind of did the traditional way. I studied Reiki, I did a bunch of other things, some New Age, some older traditions. I found success and understanding with some of it. And then there was other things that I just found were very kind of tripe and not really valuable in what they did. So one day a mentor of mine, who was one of the people I really respected in mental health, directed me to this person and said that you need this, what we now call life activation. So I went only because I had tremendous respect for my mentor. She was a super good lady and super good at what she did, and so I respected what she said. So I went to this person and got a life activation, which was so not who I was, but I did it anyways. And That led them to talking about potentially me going and seeing some guides to get the Empower Thyself. And I really, really resisted doing Empower Thyself. And at the time, I didn't understand why. I just didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to do it. Like, to the point that I was turning around on my day to go to my Empower Thyself class and heading back home and refusing to take the class, and I didn't want this. And eventually I went and I did take the class and received the initiation, got the training, and, you know, through the whole thing I sat with my arms crossed and my legs crossed, just growling and sort of snarling and being a rather impolite human being in that class, because I was, you know, I was the guy that kept pointing and saying, like, you know, how do you prove that? You know, prove this and prove that to me, because I wanted all the mental construct. And yet I was ignoring, through that entire process, while I kept screaming about I wanted the mental understanding, I was ignoring what was happening inside of me. I was feeling better, I was feeling different, I was feeling I was going the right direction, I was feeling I had clarity, and yet my mind kept saying, yeah, but this can't be true, and that can't be like this, and you can't prove this, and I kept jumping from thing to thing. Eventually that led me to having an opportunity to go to the US, living in Canada, and go to the US to do what we call Healers Academy Week 1 now. It's called a different program name back then. And I went down there, and I resisted every moment I was there. I was so frustrated inside, and yet for some reason my feet kept carrying me forward, even though I was so frustrated with the experience, because I'm not a woo-woo guy. I don't like the woo-woo. I don't like the meditate on a flower and the energy comes in. It's just not who I am. Plenty of people like that. Awesome. It's not who I am. But so, whatever. I took that training, and that led me to the thing that I was seeking probably the most, which was to become a ritual master. And once I went from Healers Academy to the Ritual Master program, I began to get a lot more understanding, and still tremendous, tremendous resistance. I probably spent, I would say this is pretty much on the money factual. I probably quit 5 to 10 times a day for the first 5 years that I was doing any training with the mystery school, because my ego was just driving me nuts, and I was so resistant to everything and so frustrated by all these concepts that I couldn't put my finger on. And then one day I stopped, and to be honest, I have to put a lot, all of it on Founder Goodney, who never stopped supporting me, but also at the same time never stopped pushing my buttons and driving me crazy. But he stood with me through the insanity, and often the conductor of that insanity. And I eventually overcame that and just sort of gave up and said, look, the authenticity is coming from me. I realized that it was me that was authenticating why I was doing it, because of how I felt and the way I was living my life. And I was just happier and more peaceful and more upbeat and clear-headed, and just, it was all these good things that were coming, and they came through this weird system that didn't make any sense to the mind. So you might call it magic, if you want to put that as magic, that if your mind can't accept it and it causes it to happen, we could also maybe say that's magic, so another form of magic. You know, the key difference is that for me, there's different ways of looking at it, but I wasn't born into some higher destiny. I wasn't born walking on water or being able to perform miracles. I'm just a regular guy. And for me, one of the things I like to remind people of is that if a regular guy can find a path of inner peace the way I did, then so can you. I am a direct product of the teachings of this lineage, and I'm a direct product of what Founder Goodney worked so hard through his craziness to make happen. And I stand as an example that there is a way to become more clear about everything in life, to become more enlightened, to be more happy and healthy, to have good relationships, and to surround yourself with good people and do all these things. And if you find another way to do that outside this mystery school, God bless you, go for it, man. Do whatever you're going to do. Find that way. If it's working, thumbs up from me, 100% got your back. But for me, this is how I found my peace. And I don't stand an example of someone with some massive predestination and superpower. I stand as an example of a regular everyday guy who fought through all my own, ego and struggle to get there. And it was the tools and the training and the teachings that got me there. So I have tremendous respect for this lineage. I have tremendous respect for Founder Goodney and for my brother Ipsissimus Adetto, who was also a huge help in me getting here. And it's not easy, guys. It's not easy at the highest levels. It's very hard. But because something's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. In fact, it's probably worth more if it's hard than it is if it's easy.